conversation, then moving to conversation with Alyssa Murphy at GoDaddy. And we had a couple of conversations, obviously, with some of the component providers, like Steve Milligan from Western Digital was here talking about disk, flash, and everything else. Sumit Sadana from SanDisk talked about the Infinite Flash, their flash initiatives. And Dan is basically, I'm going to let him introduce himself, but he's at Samsung, and he's, I think, waking the sleeping giant, I call. Because people don't realize Samsung is is a machine on flash, on SSDs, right? I'm going to let you talk about it, but introduce yourself to us first, a little bit of background, and what you're doing at Samsung specifically, the role and overall function.
Certainly, thank you, Tarek. So, as Senior Vice President of the Data Center Initiative at Samsung that's here in the Bay Area. A little bit about my background. I started my career as an engineer in what looks a lot like Internet of Things and smart cars, only it was fighter weapon systems at the Boeing company. So you can think of it as something a little bit like Pepper, flying around with airplanes, and comlinks as opposed to Internet of Things. Spent the next 20 years in the computer industry. I worked for Microsoft for a long time, and then I came and worked for NetApp a couple of years ago. And I was at Microsoft for the Windows 95 launch, so I grew up with NT and SQL, Exchange, Office 365, Azure, those sorts of things. And I had a data center role at NetApp. I just joined Samsung this spring, and the data center initiative is about making the most for customers and partners of this confluence of Samsung being the #1 producer of flash memory in the world, #1 producer of DRAM memory in the world collectively, and all of the great partners that we have that together make that a very powerful business.
So you're working very closely with Young-Sun, obviously, who's been amazing force of nature beyond Samsung and within Samsung, and you two are basically laying down the next-gen strategy and vision for Samsung. Some of it I know you cannot talk about it. There are a lot of stuff you guys are going to be coming up with in the next few quarters and obviously within the year, which is super exciting. We're super happy to be partnering with you, obviously, on multiple fronts. It may be a little bit more specific terms from you because I don't know all the details. You don't have to share all the details. I'm sure you will not. But at a high level, how is the next couple of years looking for Samsung in terms of enterprise storage? And within that context, you came from NetApp. You were in NetApp a short time, right? A couple of years?
A couple of years, yeah.
So you've done arrays, you've done disk, some flash. You know the space pretty well. You know the Azure, Microsoft Cloud. You have a lot of experience. So at a high level, what's going to happen from a Samsung perspective and market perspective in the next, let's say, 24 months? You don't have to give the details because I know there are some secret path plans going on, but the things that you can talk about.
Well, so as a bit of context, the Samsung Strategy and Innovation Center that I'm part of, it lives within the Device Solutions Group of Samsung, which is a $60 billion a year components division. And Young-Sun is the head of SSIC, which was created about 3 years ago. And its focus is to embrace early open innovation in newer emerging technologies to capitalize worldwide on these trends and what development is happening there. And there's innovation centers here, certainly in Korea and other hotspots in the world, Israel, Paris, and also in London. And the focus areas include Internet of Things, digital health, smart machines, and cloud and enterprise storage, these kinds of areas. In terms of what to look forward to from us, when we look at flash, at the tremendous disruptive power of flash, it's quite amazing. And there's a lot of things we can talk about in flash. We can talk about the business value, we can talk about the cost, we can talk about the trends. But I think the important thing to look at from this is when we look at this goal of making the most for our customers and our partners from what flash brings and from what we bring as a company, and we take a look at the trends, there's certain things that we're doing in the ecosystem. For example, last month at the Flash Memory Summit, we announced reference designs of all flash systems in which we provide the IP and the guidance on that to the ecosystem to go build that. So they can go build it on top of that type of capability. And we invest, for example, in flash in the largest storage capacity device in the world at 16 terabytes. No one else has built anything quite like that. in terms of what to look for from us, we have very important partnerships. We have very important flash memory innovation. We're embracing where the future is going. And we take a look at the disruption in IT and in storage and say, there has to be a way to bring it together. And a way to think about it is, as we were going through this panel discussion, Samsung wants everyone in this panel to be one of our partners. So, how do you think about what's possible in that kind of a world?
So, but you want some of them to be more partners than others.
Well, you, of course.
Thank you. This was not rehearsed. So, speaking of that, software-defined. Companies like Nexenta, what's the vision for that? Obviously, partnership is part of it, but what's your vision in the software-defined segment? Companies like us, and you heard Rancher talking about the containers, Francesco talking about OpenStack. Luke is doing a lot of work in automation. These are, like you said, these are all partners, but specifically from that perspective, you're also partnering with some of the blue chip companies like NetApp. That's your NetApp is obviously a partner.
Very important partner,
a very big partner for Samsung. Now with these new generation companies and ways of doing things, what's your view beyond partnership? Strategically, are you going to build your own software assets? Are you going to partner tightly? Are you going to OEM? What are the other things that you're looking at? Obviously, the answer is probably a combination of all of this, depending on the area you're focusing on. But I guess the announcements you heard from these companies, everybody announced a lot of grandiose products and initiatives. What's your key strategy for, let's say, for the next 2 years, specifically on the software-defined storage side of things?
Certainly. So I'll take that into a couple of parts. First of all, software-defined storage. Most modern storage arrays, engineered systems, have what you could call software-defined storage underneath them. In fact, if you look at ONTAP from NetApp, they've pulled it out from the hardware to have the cloud ONTAP. And what's really changed, what's really new, is this teasing apart of the hardware and the software to provide openness in a sense of choice. And we've seen this with vSAN, the third release of which came out with 6.1. We've seen it with your OpenSDx.
Sure.
And we can all make our own predictions about what's going to happen, but I think that trend is irrefutable, going in that direction of pulling apart. So then it becomes, what is this combination that customers are going to like? Well, customers like the choice of hardware platforms. There's a reason why we took our designs and said, here, ecosystem, have them. Customers like being able to choose their hypervisor. Customers like being able to choose their SDS layer. We've seen that, and many people here have spoken to that. So that's all true on one half. On the other half, let's look at the charter of SSIC. It's to accelerate open innovation of new and emerging technologies where things are being developed worldwide. So what you could look to us to do is to say, with this tremendous potential from Flash, what could we do with the ecosystem so that customers in the ecosystem enjoys the most value from that? And that's the direction to look to from us. So it's a little bit different than some companies have been looking at. It would have been very easy for us to take, hey, we just designed this thing. We know how to build appliances. We make lots of appliances, only they're in your home, right?
Right.
But we didn't say, hey, we're going to go do that. Instead, we tried to go do something that created ecosystem opportunity, including because of many important partnerships. So it's really two parts. SDS, teasing it apart. SDS as a layer is going to happen. And then separately, we're going to create value for the ecosystem.
Is disk dead?
When we look at where Flash is making traction, let's just take the enterprise for a moment. You take a look at where Flash is taking traction in the enterprise. 10 years ago, certain workloads, OLTP, mission critical, people would choose it for the simplicity, for the performance, because the performance is amazing. Then take a look at what's been happening. OLTP, then NoSQL, then VDI, then intense VDI with engineering workstations, then BI, then data warehousing, then collab. You get the whole trend. A lot of things are moving there. So as far as disk being dead, many customers make decisions to go use Flash that if you look at a pure cost basis, it's like, well, that doesn't necessarily pencil out. But they're always making the right decisions. Why? Because the value of Flash transcends the simple cost metric. Right? The 16 terabyte drive, there wouldn't be the economic driver to do that. Is disk dead? When you look at the value that people get out of Flash, and that Flash is getting higher performant, greater durability, greater density, lower cost, software such as yours that goes over the Flash that gets the cost even lower, and then take a look at the value that comes up, I think it's pretty clear which direction this is going to go in.
Yeah. Thank you for giving a straight answer, because I've been asking this all day long. Every answer was a little bit more, let's say, different. Thank you for being very straight about it. And I think Chris will agree with you from Register. One last point. Again, thank you for being so open, Dan. And that's one of the things that we love about you as an executive. Even though it's a public company, you're just very straightforward exec. I know that's why Young and you guys work very closely, very nicely together. Some of these component players, whether that disk or flash, now getting into array business. As you know, the announcements coming out. Obviously, this is a dichotomy, creating a lot of issues and challenges. Also, huge opportunities out there, because they're seeing all these big, smaller companies building, flash arrays and posting these big numbers and growth numbers, even though their cost is not in line, as we see in some S1s lately. Any flash array or some kind of a integrated system in the future in your sight for Samsung?
Let me approach that question in this
Perfect
way.
point.
When we look at the tremendous value of flash and how it's just starting to be understood, and then take a look at how customers can get that value over time, there's something that I call kind of a knowing-doing gap, right? Or a cognition adoption, a cognition solution gap. And what's most valuable for Samsung and our partners and our customers is to start trying to close that gap. To take, here's what flash can do from performance, here's what the technology can do, to here's the business value that you can go get out of it. So anything that could close that cognition solution gap is where we should be focusing. And that's intrinsically an ecosystem play for scale, to make sure a lot of different things happen. And I want to believe that with all of our partnerships, with this amazing opportunity, that something that's like an appliance focus, that there might be something with a broader vision than just that.
It makes sense. So you've been at Microsoft for a long time. How many years was Microsoft again?
I was at Microsoft longer than I lived at home with my parents, almost 18 years.
I love it. My previous company was WinTerm, Windows Terminal Server. WinTerm was built with Microsoft hand in hand. And you and I know a lot of folks, from Paul Moritz to some of the folks are not there anymore. How do you view Microsoft's new vision under Satya? Since he came on board and some of the changes he's making, what do you think? The direction with Azure, more cloud services and so on. You've been there for a long time. You were behind a lot of successful projects and programs. I know you don't like to talk about your resume too much because you've done it all already, but what's your view from a cloud services perspective? Azure is just gaining huge momentum, right? But where do you see them going? And tying that, how is that tying to your strategy within Samsung?
I think that the bets that Microsoft has been making about Azure, a lot of performance in Azure, a lot of performance in the cloud, the ability to move the storage off to a colo or on-premises, the ability to have on-premises and cloud code be very similar, and all of the manageability around that is completely harmonious with what we're doing at Samsung. And it's great to see renewed energy and focus at my former company. It's interesting. My experience of Samsung is it's got all of the great values of every great company I've worked at, and a lot more that's unique to Samsung. I see a lot of harmony between how the companies look at different things. And I'm glad to see good things happening at Microsoft. And obviously I keep in touch with them.
And amazingly, they were at VMworld. Did they join an announcement, right, with VMware?
Absolutely. One of the things that Satya brings that's really clean is a fresh view of openness and working in partnerships without the preconceived notions. You can see what he's done on cloud and services working together. It basically opens things up to invite people in more. It's, again, back to the Samsung strategy, open innovation for new and emerging technologies.
So one conversation came up one topic came up in each conversation was containers. To some it's a buzz, to some it's actually a money-making opportunity, to some is community building, maybe not money making behind that, but a lot of customers are looking at it. Alan Atkinson from Dell was here. He just mentioned that every customer conversation is now in 10 minutes moves, gravitates to containers. What's your view as Samsung, and what does that mean to you? Does it mean anything different, or just business as usual?
Well, any great innovation that comes along that quickly has an existence proof of creating value, you never want to bet against, right? And from a Samsung perspective, embracing that, understanding it, learning how to work with it. For example, in a data center storage context, what to have in containers, or in the context of VMware, how to work virtual volumes and containers up above. Of course, it's one of the trends. You know, how could one bet against containers? It would be like the existence proof of what's happening with OpenStack. It's as inevitable as XML was, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're obviously open to it. In what it does from a management and isolation, from the power of what it is completely harmonious with us. Again, our philosophy of being open, we completely embrace that.
So having said all this, maybe one last point is for you to give a call to action, maybe to the audience. Again, you have customers, partners of yours, some investors in the room. Based on the initiatives you're taking, what's the call to action for them to how to engage maybe with Samsung or beyond? I know you're hiring a lot. Some of them might be looking for new jobs. Who knows? The reason I'm making that statement in tongue-in-cheek, but you're growing your business.
That's right.
You're growing your team. You brought in some amazing executives. What's the call to action, or two, to the audience here?
Well, so the call to action that I'd make is, even though device solutions and what it's doing isn't that well known, because frankly we haven't talked about it broadly, Samsung is eager to work with all of our customers and partners in the area of innovation in the data center and data center storage. It's a very important investment that we're doing within SSIC, within a part of device solutions. So I look forward to working with you, and we want to understand how we can work with you. I'm easy to find. We're moving to the new North American headquarters for device solutions just down in San Jose next.
Amazing building, amazing campus.
It's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
Yes, and just, well, we want our guests to come to visit. We want to be able to greet them properly. And you know, just one thing that I just want to share, given that you and I have some shared technology background in an area, I was thinking back to some of my passion about Flash and where that comes from and how I feel about it, to use that word feel. And I was thinking back to a particular meeting that we were in when my company then was taking a look at how much share a technology would get. And somebody from marketing was saying, I think it's going to get maybe 5 to 10%. And somebody there said, why 10%? Why not 80%? Why not 90%? Why isn't it going to get it all? And that is how I feel about Flash. The toothpaste is out of the tube. It's awesome. Yeah. And it's great to be part of Samsung with a real focus in memory and Flash, and to have great partners like Nexenta.
Awesome. You inspire me, man. Great to meet you, obviously, through Young. I have to thank Young and say Kamsahamnida Young for us to connect, and really appreciate it. We have some joint engagements going on in large companies already, and look forward to partnering with you more. I know the folks want to meet you in the break. So on that note, we're going a quick break. Is hugely important. We're going to have our following panel. Adrian Lionel from Mirantis, CEO, is going to be with us. He's in the back. He's going to kick it off. New technology panel. Right after that, we're going to have my dear friend Chris Meller from the Register, all the way from London. I know a lot of people wanted to be here, part of this session, as well as listen to Chris. He has a lot of ideas. He's listening to a lot of different vendors, and we're going to finish it in a short session with Jeff Colvin and Pepper. So let's take a quick 10-minute break and let you have here in about 10 minutes with the panel. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.